In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to solve the Curvy Copter and Helicopter cubes. Now, if you remember my last video, I went through all the bells and whistles explaining how to solve these cubes without jumbling. So if you want to take it up higher and learn how to solve these cubes with jumbling, this is the video for you. But if you don't know anything about these cubes and want to start off easy, click the annotation card on the top right corner of the screen or the link in the description down below to go to my first video, because I will teach you the basics in complete detail on how to solve these cubes. Alright, so for those of you who want to take it up to the next level, let's get to it! Before we start, I want to talk about what I want to call each piece. These I will call corners because obviously they're on the corners. These I will call center edges because they're on the center of each edge, and they also spin like the center of a Rubik's Cube. On the helicopter cube, there are no center edge pieces whatsoever. And finally, I will call these triangle edges. So these are triangle edges, corners, and exclusive to the Curvy Copter, center edges. Now before we get started, it's important to know exactly what jumbling is and what are the basic jumbling moves. Basically, triangle edge pieces can only be in 6 spots. It can either be here, 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 and back to where it started. That's what's called an orbit of a triangle edge piece. And what jumbling does is it takes triangle edge pieces out of their original orbit and it shoves it into the orbit of another triangle edge piece. As I showed you before, this triangle edge piece can only go around here and can never get over here by just doing normal 180-degree turns. However, if we jumble it, you can see it's possible to switch these two pieces. Which means that if we were to scramble it up like this, we can no longer solve this cube by just doing normal 180-degree turns. We now have to use jumbling to solve this cube. And that's what makes jumbling a lot harder than non-jumbling. So when we're solving it, you don't want to jumble like this, because it makes it hard for you to distinguish exactly what you're doing. So when we solve this, we use the basic jumbling move, which I already just showed you. All it is you take this edge up here, turn it up like this, and take this front edge and turn it down like this. Then you spin the front 180 degrees, and that will switch these two triangle edges from their orbits, and then reset. Now, as you notice, you can only switch 2 triangle edge pieces across from each other. But let's say you wanted to switch 2 triangle edge pieces next to each other. What you can do is you can do an R and L. So now we set them across from each other. And then we can do our jumbling move, like this. As you can see, swap these two. Reset. Then we can undo our setup moves. And now, these 2 triangle edges, which before can never ever switch, have been switched. The solving method of these cubes normally involve 5 steps, but because of jumbling, you get an additional step in the beginning, and that is to turn this puzzle back into a cube. Once everything's back to a cube, everything is pretty much the same. We're going to solve the white triangle edges, then we're going to solve the corner edge trios, then we're going to flip it over and solve the remaining triangle edges, then we're going to permute the corners, and finally we're going to orient the corners. If at any time you want to skip to the next step or to go back to a previous step, you can use the timestamps in the description down below to navigate the tutorial. So without further ado, let's scramble it up. To really scramble these well with jumbling, you actually need to jumble a lot. So I use the jumbling move almost as often as I use just normal 180-degree turns. If you want a really good scramble, it's best that you do it almost every other move, or just don't use 180-degree turns at all. And now to really sell it with the scramble, we need to jumble up the cube so that it's almost completely bandaged. And that looks like that's the best I can do. I can barely turn any of these pieces anymore. So the first step is to turn this back into a cube. And this is actually pretty easy. What we want to do first is we want to find 2 arms that are sticking out, like this one and that one. And we want to convert them into normal pieces. So what I would prefer looking for is an arm that goes up to the top and an arm to the side. So when we bring this arm down like this, you see it matches up here. Now I can bring this arm up here, so it matches up like this, and we could bring it down. And now we got rid of 2 of the arms. Now we need to do the same thing for 2 more arms. Here's one sticking up, and here's another one over here, so let's bring it underneath. So it's facing to the right this time, so we have to bring this arm down here, like that. Then we can bring this arm up to match it up with the side, and then we can bring this back. And now we've gotten rid of 2 more arms. Sometimes what would happen is you can get a case like this where 2 arms are facing directly underneath another. So let me see if I can get that. Okay, so this is the case that I'm talking about, where you have an arm sticking straight up and an arm sticking straight down. What you would have to do is we need to bring this arm over to here and then up top like this, so that this arm connects with this side. Then we can spin this side 180 degrees so that this arm matches up with this side, and then we can turn this side back. So yeah, it's pretty easy and pretty intuitive. You can pretty much figure it out yourself. But in case if you struggle a little bit, I just showed you how to do it. Now for the second step, we need to solve the white triangle edges. I'm going to assume you can already do this without jumbling already. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get as far as we can without jumbling. So let's see how far we can go. Alright, so this is how far as we can go. As you can see, this piece cannot get up here without jumbling. And you can also see that this triangle edge is in fact in this other white triangle edge's orbit. So we need to switch this triangle edge piece with one in this one's orbit. So if we switch this white triangle edge with this orange one, we would be in the correct orbit. So we have to switch these 2 triangle edge pieces, and to do that, we need to first get these across from each other, like so. See, now they're across from each other. Now we can do the jumbling move, and then we undo our setup moves. And as you can see, our triangle edge piece is in the correct orbit, and we can finish solving from there. And there we go. Alright, so now we're on the third step, which is to build corner edge trios. Now basically this is the exact same thing as we did for the non-jumbling solve. So we need to find a corner in the bottom. Here's one right here. We have to orient this piece so that white faces down. Like that. We have to match this up with the center edge piece, so we need to flip it out of the way, flip the edge, and bring it back. And as you can see, we have matched the center edge piece with the corner, and that was the easy part. Now this next part is actually the hardest part, which is getting these 2 triangle edge pieces in. And as you can see, I need a red and blue to go into these spots. Now we'll start with red first, and the only triangles that are in this one's orbit are this one, this one, this one, this one, or this one. And if there are no reds, like you see here, in any of these 5 spots, that tells us we need to use jumbling to solve this piece. So here's a red triangle edge, and as you can see, if we switch this triangle edge with this yellow, like this, then red would be in the correct orbit. But before we do the jumbling move, what I like to do is I like to protect this corner by swinging it up to the top. We don't want our jumbling moves to interfere with it. And since our corner is protected, we can now do the jumbling move to switch these 2 pieces. So we need to get them across from each other, like that. Now we can perform our jumbling move, and we have swapped these 2 pieces, and then we can restore our setup moves. So now we have swapped these 2 pieces, and now we can go ahead and solve it without jumbling. And there we go. Now all we need now is the blue one. So again, the blue could be in 5 different places. It could either be up here, 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 or there, and there are no blues in any of these 5 spots. So we're going to have to use jumbling again to get this piece in. So let's see, what can we use to jumble? Ah, here we go. Here's a blue triangle edge piece. If we take this blue triangle edge and switch it with this orange, then the blue will be in the correct orbit. So let's do the same thing. Let's protect this corner by swinging it up to the top. Now we can do the jumbling move to switch these 2 pieces. So let's set them up so they're across from each other, like that. Now we can do the jumbling move, like that, and then reset our setup moves. So now we have blue in the correct orbit. So now we can go ahead and solve it like normally. So move the corner out of the way, put the edge in place, and bring it back. Now we have our first trio. Now you have to do the same thing for the remaining 3 trios, and then you're done with step 3. So for step 4, we want to solve the remaining triangle edges. Now for the jumbling solve, we're going to do this process a little bit differently. What we first have to do is make sure that everything's in the correct orbit before we start solving anything. And as always, we're going to focus on the side colors, and then the top will automatically solve itself. So let's start with green first, and I can tell you this is a pretty good sign. So we'll move this triangle edge out of the way, then we'll flip the green center edge piece on top, then we'll pair up the 2 triangle edges, and we'll flip it down. So as you can see, we got pretty lucky with green. It didn't require jumbling at all. So let's move on to the next color, which is orange. So we got this piece in. Right off the bat, I can tell you we have a problem. This triangle edge piece is in the correct orbit, but this other triangle edge piece is in the same orbit as this other one. So what we need to do is we need to use jumbling to get this triangle edge down to here. So what we can do is we can take this triangle edge and swap it with this one, because if we do that, we would be in the correct orbit. So let's go ahead and set it across from where we want to swap it with. So now we have this triangle edge to switch with this one. And now we can go ahead and do our jumbling move. From now on, if we do jumble, we jumble only with yellow, because yellow's on the top, and if we jumble yellow, we're not going to mess up anything. And it just so happens to be the case that our triangle edge piece is across from yellow, so we can go ahead and do the jumbling move. So now, you can see this triangle edge is in the correct orbit, and we can solve it like normally. And there we go. Orange is now in the correct orbit. Now let's do blue. Here's the first blue, and oh, look at the other blue. As you can tell, this triangle edge piece is in the correct orbit, but this triangle edge is not. So to put this triangle edge in the correct orbit, we can put it across from where it goes. And this just so happens to be yellow, so we can easily execute that plan. So let's take this across from where it goes, and now they're across from each other, and we can do the jumbling move. Like that. And we got blue in. Now notice we messed up our orange and our green, but at this point we don't really care if it's solved or not. All we care about is if they stay in the correct orbit. So let's ignore that for now, and we'll finish off with red. So as you can see, we have the same case that we had with orange, where this triangle edge is in the correct orbit, but this one is in the same orbit as this triangle edge. So what we have to do is we need to get this triangle edge in this one's orbit. So if we swap it with this one, we can put this one in the correct orbit. So let's get it across from the one we want to switch, and now we can go ahead and do our jumbling move. But wait, we don't want to do it now because green is not a safe color. We need to switch this triangle edge with only yellow. So here's a yellow triangle edge on top, so we can flip it down, and now we are in a safe position to do the jumbling move. So let's go ahead and do it now. Perfect. Now that we have that done, we can go ahead and check the orbits of our pieces. So let's see, red's in the correct orbit, green's already solved, orange is in the correct orbit, and blue's in the correct orbit. So we can go ahead and solve it like we normally would for the non-jumbling solve. So let's get this across from where it goes, like that. Now we can go for green, do it like we normally would, like that. And we have a parity case. So as you can tell, we can get parity cases at the end. So in my case, I just happen to get two parity cases into one, so let me show you how to solve the parity cases one at a time. So here's the first parity case where this center edge needs to flip. Now surprisingly, the way we're going to solve this case is we're going to use an algorithm that you already learned before. And that algorithm is when we switch two corners on the helicopter cube. What it's actually going to do on the Curvy Copter is it's going to switch these two corners and flip the center edge piece. So let's go ahead and do the algorithm. It's JR, JL, F. Now as you can see, we have flipped this center edge piece. The second parity case is when we have two triangle edges that need to switch, like this. So to swap these two triangle edges, what we need to do is we have to use a jumbling move on these two yellow pieces. So basically, it's technically an algorithm because we have to do an additional move so we don't mess up any of these pieces. So here's the algorithm to do that. R, L, JR, F, R, L. And as you can see, we have swapped these two pieces. And this is the final parity case where two triangle edges need to switch and are in the correct orbit. So what we have to do to solve this case is we have to do the same thing to switch these two triangle edges. And then once we do that, we would have an easy 3 cycle. But before we do the algorithm though, we have to check to make sure that these two triangle edges are the same color because it actually switches these two. So we have it in a position so that these two are the same color, so we can go ahead and do the algorithm. R, L, JR, F, R, L. And now we have a 3 cycle of triangle edges. And the algorithm to do this is actually very, very easy. So what we have to do is you have to put the 3 cycle in the front, top, and right, and then you do the algorithm F, R, F, R. And as you can see, it didn't work, so what I have to do is do it again. So F, R, F, R. And as you can see, we have corrected the parity case. And those are all the parity cases on the Curvy Copter, and we are done with step 4. Now we're on step 5, which is to permute the corners. And from this point onwards, everything's the exact same as we did for the non-jumbling solve. And for completion's sake, I'm going to go ahead and briefly explain how to do it because I already explained it in complete detail on the non-jumbling tutorial. So as you can see, here's one corner in the correct place, yellow, blue, orange. So now we can go ahead and put it in this position and do the algorithm. R, L, B, L, B, R, B, L, B, L. And as you can see, it didn't work this time, so we'll do it again. R, L, B, L, B, R, B, L, B, L. And now it worked this time. So now this concludes step 5. Alright, so the final step is to orient the corners and solve the cube. Now there's one particular case that I didn't go over yet, and that is on the helicopter cube. As you can see, I have 2 corner pieces that are oriented correctly across from each other. And for the algorithm to work, you need to have the 2 corners adjacent to each other. It's basically the exact same thing. You put 2 corners in front and see what the algorithm will do. This corner will turn over to the side, and this one won't solve, so that won't work. Let's see what this will do. This will turn down to the side, and this will be unsolved. That's not going to work either, because we're going to have 3. Let's try this side. This will unsolve, and this one will solve. So now we'll have 2 corners solved right next to each other, and that is our target. So we're going to use blue as our front face, and then we'll do our algorithm. F, R, L, B, R, L. And then we do it again. F, R, L, B, R, L. And now we have 2 corners that are solved adjacent to each other. So now let me do the same thing on the Curvy Copter. So let's check these 2 corners. This one will turn over to the side. This one will unsolve. That's not going to work. This corner will turn to the side. And this one will turn up and solve. So orange is going to be our front face, and we can do the algorithm. F, R, L, B, R, L. F, R, L, B, R, L. And now we have 2 corners solved adjacent to each other. Now we can solve the other 2. In this case, we're going to have to do it twice. But there's a shortcut to this. Instead of doing what we would normally do and do it twice, we can reverse the algorithm so that this corner will turn clockwise and this corner will turn counterclockwise. And so the algorithm for that would be R, L, B, R, L, F. And then we have to do it again. So R, L, B, R, L, F. Whoop. And then we do it again. R, L, B, R, L, F. And we're done. So if you need any additional help on the final 2 steps, go to my video on how to solve these cubes without jumbling, as I explain them in more detail than I did here. Heck, I might even make an all-new tutorial if it was too confusing for you. So there we go. That's how to solve the Curvy Copter and helicopter cubes. Thank you all for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up and please share with your friends and family. And if you haven't, subscribe and click the notification bell so you don't miss an upload from me. Until next time, toodles!